In the world of glitter and glam, some people go to extraordinary lengths to secure their place in the spotlight. And on a particularly memorable evening, one influencer's obsession with status and social media fame led her into a confrontation that would not only backfire, but change her life forever. What happens when a spoiled influencer, known for her lavish lifestyle and million-strong following, decides to humiliate a quiet, unassuming man in a hoodie at one of Los Angeles' most exclusive restaurants? The outcome is as shocking as it is unforgettable, and trust me, you'll never see it coming. Before we dive deeper into this jaw-dropping story, why not take a moment to tell us where you're tuning in from? If you're loving this tale, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow, we've got something even more special lined up. Picture this. It's 7 p.m. in Los Angeles, and the city is alive with the scent of fresh truffles and the sparkle of imported champagne. The parking lot outside Chispaca is an automotive runway, lined with sleek luxury cars that look as if they'd been straight off the pages of a fashion magazine. The valet is busy ushering millionaires and celebrities from their cars, and the air practically hums with wealth. Inside, the restaurant is a sanctuary of sophistication. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over pristine linen tablecloths, and waiters glide through the space with the precision of dancers, carrying plates that look like true works of culinary art. Chispaca isn't just a place to eat. It's a symbol of exclusivity. Its clientele is handpicked, and every single table is reserved for those whose last names hold more power than most could ever dream of. It's a place where the ordinary person simply doesn't belong. Or, at least, that's how it was supposed to stay. Then, the door swung open with a flourish. OMG guys, you won't believe where I am right now. The sharp, theatrical voice of Addison Dale, better known to her millions of followers as Addison, cut through the ambience. Holding her phone high, she beamed at the camera with a perfectly rehearsed smile, clearly used to being the center of attention. Addison wasn't just a social media star. She was an institution, with over 3 million followers and a reputation for flaunting the high life. She knew how to stir the pot. As she strolled into Chispaca, the air around her practically crackled with the kind of self-assuredness that comes only from a deep belief in one's own magnificence. "I'm at Chispaca, the most exclusive restaurant in LA," she announced dramatically, her phone capturing her every move. "I always get what I want, always." She strutted through the restaurant like she owned it, draped in a shimmering dress that clung to her like a second skin, her platinum black hair cascading in perfect waves, and her makeup, though impeccable, gave off an almost artificial vibe. Her eyes scanned the room, looking for signs of admiration or recognition. But to her surprise, the other diners were mostly too engrossed in their own meals to even glance her way. "Guys, do you have any idea how much it costs to eat here?" Addison continued, her voice dripping with theatricality. "The cheapest dish must be worth my personal trainer's rent." She laughed, and her followers flooded the comments section with responses like, "Haha, Addison being Addison," and "OMG, I love this chaos, keep going queen." Satisfied with the attention, she leaned back in her seat and scanned the room with a look of barely concealed disdain, clearly expecting more of the same adoration she was used to receiving online. "Luxury, am I right?" Addison said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I swear, places like this need to live up to the hype, or I'm going to expose them in my stories. I've seen better food at a cafeteria." Her followers, always ready for a dose of drama, encouraged her every step of the way. "Yes, expose them, queen." One wrote, "Love when you do these raw, honest reviews." Another comment read, "I can just imagine the peasants gasping right now." But then, something unexpected happened. Something that would completely derail her self-absorbed performance and alter the course of her night. In the quietest corner of the room, at a table so unobtrusive it was almost invisible, sat a man. He wore a simple dark blue hoodie, and unlike the other diners who were dressed to the nines, he seemed out of place. His head was lowered as he ate slowly, seemingly indifferent to the glitzy world around him. He wasn't posing for photos or casting glances, nor was he trying to make an impression. He was simply there, eating his meal in peace, lost in his own little world. This man didn't appear to care about the flashing cameras, the luxury, or the social media circus unfolding at the other end of the room. To Addison, he seemed like a perfect candidate for ridicule. Her followers began to notice, and the comments started to flood in. "OMG, who's that guy behind you? He looks so familiar." One follower posted, "Wait, is that? No way." But Addison, too caught up in her own performance, didn't yet realize the significance of this random man. She was oblivious to the fact that she had just captured the attention of someone who would completely change the trajectory of her night. And worse, she was about to make the worst mistake of her life. Addison, focused solely on her live stream, swiped her finger across the screen to adjust her angle. Her fingers paused for a moment as she frowned. Something was off. No matter how she adjusted her position, that man in the blue hoodie was still in the shot. The comments grew louder. "That guy in the background is so out of place. He's just sitting there like a total weirdo." Addison's frustration began to show. "Ugh, I can't get this right. He's totally messing up my vibe." She muttered to herself, her voice tinged with annoyance. With a forced, sugar-sweet smile plastered on her face, she got up and made her way toward the man. Her phone was still held high, broadcasting the whole exchange to her millions of followers. "Hey there, sir," she cooed, her voice now dripping with false politeness. "Would you mind moving out of my shot? I need a more aesthetic background for my video." The man didn't respond immediately. His eyes remained lowered, still lost in his meal, completely unaware that he was about to become the target of her ridicule. What Addison didn't know, though, was that the man sitting there wasn't just any regular diner. He wasn't just an unimportant background character in her Instagram story. And at that very moment, he was about to show her that sometimes, it's not the loudest voices that deserve the spotlight. But I bet you're wondering, who was this man? Why was he so unfazed by her outburst? And most importantly, how would this whole drama unfold? The truth is, the man Addison was trying to humiliate wasn't just any ordinary person. In fact, he was someone she could never have imagined. A person who was about to flip the entire situation on its head. Stay tuned, because the real twist is just about to begin. The man slowly lifted his eyes, locking his gaze with hers. His expression was calm, unbothered, like he had just stepped out of the quietest of rooms. He blinked once, then again, and after setting his fork down delicately, he wiped the corners of his mouth with his napkin. As he did so, a small smile tugged at the corner of his lips, and the words he spoke next hit her like a thunderclap. "The real world doesn't have filters, Mississippi." Addison froze. The comments section on her live stream exploded in an instant, flashing on her screen faster than she could process them. What? Did he just throw shade at her? One comment read, "Who is this guy? I like him." Another one chimed in. Addison blinked a few times, caught completely off guard. What was this guy even talking about? He wasn't playing along with the show, the spectacle she had carefully curated for her millions of followers. She let out a nervous, breathy laugh, her usual cool evaporating. Yeah, sure," she stammered, trying to regain control. "But this is an important live stream, you know." She pointed at her phone as if she needed to explain something as obvious as the air they were both breathing. The man didn't respond. He simply shrugged and returned to his meal, tearing a piece of bread with an unhurried, almost deliberate pace. The silence between them was thick, charged with an energy that made Addison feel a slight heat creeping up her face. Something wasn't right. Around the restaurant, the first few patrons started to notice the small exchange. Glances were exchanged, murmurs rose. For the first time in the evening, Addison felt a weight she had never had to carry before. The feeling that she was losing control of the situation. The bright lights of her live stream, the world she usually dominated, suddenly seemed far away. She crossed her arms defensively, trying to mask the unease that was starting to build within her. "Oh, I get it," she said, her voice dripping with feigned sarcasm. "You want attention, right?" She rolled her eyes, her smile a little too wide, a little too forced. "I totally support that, sir, but there are way cooler ways to go about it." The man remained completely unfazed. His focus was entirely on his meal, as if the drama unfolding in front of him was nothing more than background noise. Irritation began to knot in Addison's chest. This wasn't going according to plan. She needed to steer this conversation back to where it belonged. In her hands, she took a deep breath, steeling herself. "Anyway, guys," she said, her voice suddenly bright and rehearsed again. "I try to be polite, but some people just don't understand the concept of collaboration, right?" The comments exploded again, but this time, there was a noticeable shift in tone. "Haha, this guy's iconic," one comment said. "He just owned you with class." Another read, "Addison, you're being a bit harsh, don't you think?" For the first time in her career, Addison realized she wasn't 100% in control of the narrative anymore. The man in the dark blue hoodie, sitting there so calmly and so indifferent to the game she was playing, had turned the tables on her in a way she hadn't seen coming. Worse still, he didn't care at all. His relaxed demeanor was ruining everything she had worked so hard to build. Nearby tables were now whispering. Patrons were sneaking glances, trying to piece together what exactly was going on. And though Addison could feel their eyes on her, she refused to back down. No way. She couldn't show weakness. Turning back to the man, she kept her voice steady but strained. "Seriously, can't you just, I don't know, move to another table? It'll be quick." He raised an eyebrow, staring at her for a beat. "I like this table." That was the final straw. Addison's patience snapped. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in deep, mentally counting to 3. When she opened them again, her gaze was razor-sharp, her voice dripping with thinly veiled disdain. "Sir, I don't know if you've noticed, but this is a high-end restaurant," she said, her tone carrying a venomous edge. "The least we expect here is a little self-awareness." The man simply smiled, finishing his bite of food at his own leisurely pace. "Self-awareness," he repeated, as if savoring the word on his tongue. Addison scoffed. "Exactly." She shifted on her feet, suddenly adopting an air of faux compassion, turning back to the camera. "Since you seem so comfortable here, I'll give you some free advice. Have you ever heard of energy? High vibrations. This place is all about maintaining a high frequency, you know? And honestly, sir," she paused, a smile curving up at the corners of her lips, "you seem kind of drained. Maybe a salt bath would help." Silence fell over the restaurant like a heavy curtain. Addison's words hung in the air, and the reaction was swift. Her followers, usually eager to back her every move, weren't so sure this time. The comments were now filled with awkward laughter and secondhand embarrassment. "Oof, that was kind of weird," one comment said. "Addison, I think you went a bit too far," another added. Yikes. But Addison, ever the performer, thought she had one. She was still convinced that she was in control. "What?" she said, brushing it off. "It's not a big deal, guys. Who hasn't messed around a little?" She turned back to the man, flashing a forced, dazzling smile. But something was off. The chat took an unexpected turn. "Wait, I think I know that guy. OMG, no way, Addison. Get out of there before it's too late." Addison frowned, completely confused. What were her followers talking about? She quickly scrolled through the comments, her fingers racing across the screen. Her stomach sank as the truth hit her like a freight train. She recognized the name now. The man in the dark blue hoodie was none other than Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves. The Keanu Reeves. A living legend. One of the most beloved actors in Hollywood. A man known not just for his unparalleled talent, but for his down-to-earth personality and kind heart. The same man she had just humiliated in front of millions of people. Her blood turned cold. Her face went pale. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. It couldn't be him. There was no way. But as her gaze flicked back to the man sitting across from her, his serene expression felt all too familiar now. The entire restaurant had caught on. Patrons were whispering in hushed tones. Phones were coming out to record the scene. And Addison's carefully constructed world was moments away from crumbling to dust. Trying to save face, she forced a laugh, though it felt hollow and uncomfortable in her throat. "Oh, come on, guys. You're overreacting. Of course I know who he is. Keanu's a cool actor and all, but like, no one's untouchable, right?" Keanu didn't flinch. He didn't react. He simply stared at her, calm and unbothered. The silence stretched out, thick with the weight of everything she had just done. He didn't need to say a word to have the room's attention. His presence was overwhelming, his calmness disarming, and somehow that made Addison feel smaller than she ever had before. Desperate to flip the narrative, she turned back to her camera. Guys, seriously, it's not a big deal. Who hasn't messed around a little, right? Her voice trembled, but she tried to sound confident. And then, in the silence of that restaurant, Keanu Reeves finally spoke. He placed his napkin on the table, looked her directly in the eyes, and said the words that would destroy her. "Why don't you just leave me alone, Addison?" Addison's face drained of color. The final curtain had dropped, and her fall from grace had just begun. Addison Lux stood frozen, her breath caught in her throat, as she faced Keanu Reeves, the man who had just shattered her carefully constructed world. The atmosphere in the restaurant shifted, a palpable tension filling the air. The waiters had come to a halt, their movements suspended in mid-action. The patrons, once absorbed in their own meals, were now sitting on the edge of their seats, eyes glued to the unfolding drama. The unmistakable sound of smartphones being lifted filled the room, each camera poised to capture the spectacle. Keanu Reeves, undeterred by the scene, calmly placed his napkin on the table, his movements deliberate, as if time itself had slowed down around him. He then looked up at Addison, his gaze unwavering, a quiet kind of devastation in his eyes. It wasn't anger, nor irritation, that radiated from him. It was something more profound, compassion, not pity, but a somber understanding, as though he was witnessing a tragic inevitability. And then, in the calmest, most measured voice imaginable, Keanu spoke the words that would haunt Addison for the rest of her life. "You know, I never had to beg for attention online to feel relevant." The words cut through the air like a blade, silencing the room. The entire restaurant froze. The laughter, the murmurs, everything stopped. For a brief moment, it felt as though the world held its breath. Addison's smile, once confident and assured, faltered and stiffened on her face. She had no comeback. The words had landed with surgical precision, rendering her speechless. The live chat on her phone exploded into chaos, but Addison was too stunned to react. Her fingers shook as she read the comments, the flood of messages tumbling over each other. There was no defending herself now. Keanu took a slow sip of his wine, not a single glance toward the camera, as if the entire situation were beneath him. Or perhaps it simply didn't matter to him. To Keanu, it was just another moment in a life he had mastered, untouched by the antics of the online world. But to Addison, it was everything. This was the moment that unraveled her. The moment when the veil of control she had so carefully draped over her life was torn apart in an instant. Her face flushed with embarrassment. She couldn't let it stand. She had to respond. She had to regain control, to defend herself, to prove that she was still in charge. But the rage that simmered beneath the surface was now rising. And with it came the familiar sting of shame. How had it come to this? "Oh, great," she sneered, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and panic. "Now you're going to hit me with some deep wisdom? Who do you think you are?" Her voice shook, and she could feel the eyes of every person in the room on her. The patrons, the staff, they were all watching, and for the first time in her career, Addison felt the overwhelming weight of judgment. The whispers began, subtle at first, but growing louder as the realization spread through the restaurant. People were turning to each other, exchanging knowing glances. Some were recording, others were typing frantically into their phones. For a brief, fleeting moment, Addison saw the truth. She was no longer the queen of her live stream, the charismatic influencer who controlled every narrative. She was alone. The people she had once commanded with her charm were now distant, no longer on her side. But Addison wasn't ready to concede just yet. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and tried again. "You might be famous, Keanu Reeves," she said, her voice forced, "but I'm the new generation." She turned toward the camera, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "People like him are over. This is the future. And if he doesn't get it, that's his loss." A heavy silence descended on the restaurant. And then, Keanu chuckled. It was low, almost inaudible, but it cut through the tension like a knife. The sound of it echoed in the room, and it was enough to make Addison's stomach churn. It wasn't mocking, not at all. It was something else, something far worse. Keanu lifted his gaze again, that small, knowing smile still tugging at his lips. And then he spoke, his words once again hanging in the air like a storm waiting to break. "The problem with the new generation isn't the future they create," he said, his voice steady and unwavering. "It's the emptiness they leave behind." Boom! The words landed like a thunderclap, shaking the foundation of everything Addison thought she knew. Gasps rippled through the room. The live chat on her phone went into overdrive, the comments now overwhelmingly in Keanu's favor. Addison's heart raced. She had no response, no retort. She had been beaten, not just in the argument, but in every sense of the word. Her carefully curated image, her carefully constructed world, was crumbling around her. The fury that had built up inside Addison now exploded. Her face was hot with humiliation, and her hands clenched into fists, trembling with rage. She couldn't back down. She wouldn't. She was Addison Lux. She couldn't lose like this. In a desperate, almost instinctual move, Addison swung her fist toward Keanu. The strike was fast, fueled by hatred, by the desperate need to regain control of a situation that was slipping through her fingers. But Keanu didn't flinch. He didn't even move. He simply raised one hand, and in one smooth motion, he caught her wrist mid-air. Addison's heart stopped. Her arm trembled, and for a moment, she couldn't pull away. His grip was firm, but it wasn't aggressive. It wasn't violent. It was just unyielding. Keanu held her wrist with the kind of quiet strength that left her powerless to do anything but stare into his eyes. His expression held no anger, no malice, just pity. Pity for the woman who had built her life on arrogance and shallow validation. And that was when it hit her. The realization, sharp and cold, pierced her heart. The rage drained from her, leaving only a deep, searing shame. The illusion of control she had lived with for so long shattered in that moment. She was no longer in charge of the narrative. She was no longer the center of attention. In that one quiet, effortless gesture, Keanu had stripped her of everything. Without a word, he released her wrist, his eyes never leaving hers. Addison's hand hung limp at her side, the weight of what had just happened crashing down on her. She staggered backward, her heels slipping on the polished floor, and for a brief moment, her phone wobbled dangerously in her hand. Keanu sighed, his gaze returning to his meal, completely indifferent to the chaos he had just caused. He took a final sip of his wine and resumed eating, as if nothing had happened. But for Addison, the world had just ended. The restaurant erupted in laughter. It wasn't cruel, not exactly. It was a release, a collective exhale as the tension broke. The sound of it was deafening. But for Addison, it was the sound of her humiliation being sealed, immortalized in real time. Phones were recording every second, and the comments on her live stream were now an uncontrollable avalanche of mockery and scorn. She couldn't take it anymore. Her face was burning, her pride in tatters. She needed to escape, but before she could take a single step, the voice of the restaurant manager sliced through the air, sharp and unwavering. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave the restaurant immediately," he said, his expression cold, his stance unyielding. Addison's heart skipped a beat. Her mind raced. "You're joking, right?" she said, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. "Do you know who I am?" The manager didn't blink. "Here at Cheesebaka, we value respect and the experience of our guests. And you, miss, clearly do not meet that standard." Addison felt her face burn with humiliation, but she was beyond caring. She looked around, expecting someone to defend her, to stand up for her. But no one did. The guests stared back at her blankly, their expressions neutral. Some even seemed to take satisfaction in the situation. And then, it hit her. She was utterly alone. "This is ridiculous," she exploded, crossing her arms. "I'm going to cancel this restaurant. You're all screwed. My followers will destroy you." Keanu, still sitting calmly at his table, didn't even look up. He merely gave her a faint, knowing smile. "Are you sure?" he murmured, taking another sip of his wine. Addison's stomach dropped. She turned toward her phone, her fingers trembling as she tried to find some support. But the comments had changed. They were no longer on her side. "Girl, I think you already lost this battle. Addison, stop embarrassing yourself. This is painful to watch. Read the room, woman. You messed with the wrong guy." Her heart sank. It was over. She had lost not just the argument, not just control of the narrative, but her entire identity. The manager's cold words sealed her fate. "Our staff will escort you to the exit." Addison's world collapsed. She had no choice. With a last, furious glance at the restaurant, she turned and marched toward the exit, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. She was furious, defeated, and utterly broken. As she stepped through the door, the entire restaurant erupted into applause. It wasn't forced. It wasn't out of cruelty. It was relief. And in the midst of it all, Keanu Reeves simply went back to eating, as though nothing had happened. For him, it hadn't. But for Addison, this was the beginning of her worst nightmare. And little did she know, her downfall was only just beginning. As she climbed into her car, trembling with rage, she pulled out her phone, her live stream still running. 4.3 million people were watching. But the comments weren't the same. The support she had expected was nowhere to be found. The memes started soon after, flooding the internet. Her face, frozen in shock, became the perfect symbol of her downfall. The captions were merciless. "When you pick a fight with the wrong person, no filter can fix this. High vibrations, more like high delusions." But the worst was yet to come. The emails started arriving. The entire world was talking about what had happened. Addison Lux's public humiliation had become one of the most talked about moments on the internet. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone had a joke. But the one thing that made her burn with shame more than anything else was that Keanu Reeves never said a word about it. He didn't need to. And that, more than anything else, destroyed her. She wanted him to react, to give an interview, to acknowledge her existence. But he never did. And in that silence, Addison understood that her battle had already been lost. Keanu Reeves simply carried on with his life, unfazed by the chaos that exploded across social media. While the virtual world watched Addison Lux's empire crumble, he strolled peacefully through the streets of Los Angeles, sipping coffee at a quiet cafe, riding his motorcycle, and living as if the public collapse of her world was the least of his concerns. The best response he could offer was, in fact, no response at all. Silence. His indifference was his most powerful statement, a quiet testament to the fact that those who truly matter don't need to shout for attention. By the end of the week, a journalist managed to slip into Cheesebacca, gaining access to the restaurant's guestbook. Flipping through its pages, the journalist paused at a signature that caught his eye. Keanu Reeves. Beneath his name, written in elegant, simple handwriting, was a short but impactful message in black ink. True influence isn't measured by what you flaunt, but by what you share with the world. The photo of the message was snapped, posted online, and, of course, went viral. The world went wild, sharing the profound words of a man who had silently defeated Addison with nothing more than his calm demeanor. Meanwhile, Addison, sitting alone in the darkness of her apartment, watched everything unfold in real time. The empire she had built from nothing had crumbled before her eyes. Sponsors disappeared. Partnerships evaporated. Her engagement plummeted. Admiration turned to ridicule. And out there, Keanu Reeves continued his life, as quiet and unaffected as ever. He walked the streets of Los Angeles, dressed in a simple dark blue hoodie, unbothered by the noise around him. Because to him, nothing had changed. He never asked for the spotlight. He never needed to defend himself. Those who are truly relevant don't need to prove anything to anyone. In the end, Addison Lux wasn't a real threat. She was just another person desperately trying to stay in the spotlight, to be remembered at any cost. In a world where so many shout for attention, Keanu reminded us that true respect is earned in silence. If you enjoyed this story, we have many more that will warm your heart. Click the screen to explore more stories of hope, compassion, and resilience.
Thank you for watching. If you missed our last story, don't worry, I've got you covered. I'll leave it here for you to watch. Hope you enjoy it.
Picture this: a quiet road, a heartless act, and an unexpected hero. Keanu Reeves, known for his on-screen heroics, found himself in a real-life drama that would touch the hearts of millions. As he drove down a deserted street, he witnessed a shocking scene: a helpless dog being callously tossed from a moving car. In that moment, the line between actor and activist blurred, and Keanu's compassionate nature took center stage. What followed was a week-long journey of healing, not just for the injured pup, but for Keanu's soul as well, as he nursed the dog back to health, a bond form that would drive him to seek justice in the most unexpected way. This tale of canine rescue and human redemption will leave you wondering, how far would you go to right a wrong? Join us as we unravel this emotional story of love, loyalty, and the unbreakable spirit of both man and his four-legged friend. Before we continue the story, grab your popcorn and get comfy. Let us know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you love stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. We have another amazing story lined up for you tomorrow. On a crisp autumn morning, Keanu Reeves stepped out of his modest Los Angeles home, ready for what he thought would be just another day. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon, casting a warm glow on the quiet streets. Keanu, known for his down-to-earth nature, decided to take a leisurely walk before heading to his latest film set. Little did he know that this simple decision would set in motion a series of events that would change his life and the life of another soul forever. As he strolled down the tree-lined avenue, Keanu's mind wandered to his upcoming scenes. He was deep in thought, mentally rehearsing his lines and considering the emotional depth he wanted to bring to his character. The gentle rustle of leaves beneath his feet and the distant chirping of birds provided a soothing backdrop to his contemplations. Keanu had always been an early riser, finding solace in the tranquility of dawn. This morning ritual allowed him to center himself before diving into the chaotic world of Hollywood. He breathed in the crisp air, feeling grateful for these moments of peace. His path took him through a local park, where he often found inspiration for his roles and a connection to the simpler things in life. As he walked, Keanu reflected on his journey as an actor and the impact he hoped to make through his work. He believed in the power of storytelling to touch hearts and change perspectives. Little did he know that today, he would become part of a real-life story more compelling than any script he had ever read. The neighborhood was just beginning to wake up. A few joggers nodded respectfully as they passed, recognizing the actor but allowing him his privacy. Keanu appreciated this about his community: the ability to blend in and be treated like any other resident. It was this normalcy that he cherished, a stark contrast to the glitz and glamour of Hollywood premieres and red carpets. As he rounded a corner, Keanu's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a car engine revving aggressively. The peaceful morning air was suddenly shattered by the harsh noise, causing him to look up from his reverie. What he saw next would forever be etched in his memory, transforming his ordinary day into something extraordinary. The serenity of the morning was abruptly shattered as Keanu's eyes locked onto a scene that seemed almost surreal in its cruelty. A sleek, black car had screeched to a halt at the side of the road, its engine still running aggressively. The passenger door flew open with such force that it seemed ready to tear off its hinges. What happened next unfolded in a matter of seconds, but for Keanu, it felt like an eternity. A man, his face contorted with rage, emerged from the vehicle. In his arms was a small, struggling bundle, a dog, whimpering and clearly terrified. Without a moment's hesitation, the man violently threw the helpless animal onto the sidewalk. The sickening thud as the dog hit the concrete echoed in the quiet street, a sound that would haunt Keanu for days to come. Time seemed to stand still as Keanu processed the horrific act he had just witnessed. The man, oblivious to Keanu's presence, spat out a string of obscenities at the trembling creature before slamming the car door shut. The tires screeched as the vehicle sped away, leaving behind a cloud of exhaust and an injured, frightened dog. Keanu stood frozen for a split second, his mind reeling from the shock of what he had just seen. The contrast between the peaceful morning he had been enjoying and this act of senseless cruelty was jarring. It was as if two different worlds had collided. the world of everyday kindness in the world of inexplicable brutality. As the reality of the situation sank in, a surge of emotions washed over Keanu. Anger, disbelief, and a profound sense of injustice battled within him. How could someone be so heartless? What kind of person would harm an innocent animal in such a callous manner? These questions raced through his mind as he struggled to comprehend the cruelty he had just witnessed. But beneath the anger and shock, another emotion began to surface: determination. Keanu had always been known for his compassionate nature, both on and off screen. He had supported numerous animal welfare causes over the years, believing deeply in the importance of protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Now, faced with a real-life situation that demanded immediate action, Keanu felt a sense of purpose crystallize within him. The actor's instincts kicked in, not those honed on movie sets, but the innate human instinct to help a creature in distress. Without a second thought, Keanu rushed towards the injured dog, his heart pounding with a mix of adrenaline and concern. As he approached, he could see the animal trembling, its eyes wide with fear and pain. Keanu's mind raced, trying to recall everything he knew about handling injured animals. He knew he had to be cautious. A frightened and hurt dog might lash out in self-defense. Slowly, he crouched down, making himself appear as non-threatening as possible. He began to speak in soft, soothing tones, hoping to calm the terrified creature. "Hey there, little one," Keanu murmured, his voice gentle and reassuring. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. You're safe now." As he inched closer, Keanu could see the extent of the dog's injuries. There were visible scrapes and bruises from the impact with the sidewalk, and the way the dog held its body suggested there might be more severe internal injuries. The sight only strengthened Keanu's resolve to help. Carefully, he extended his hand, allowing the dog to catch his scent. He remained still, patient, knowing that trust would be crucial in this situation. Slowly, ever so slowly, the dog's trembling began to subside. Its eyes, still wary, seemed to hold a glimmer of hope as it gazed up at Keanu. In that moment, as man and dog locked eyes, a connection was formed. It was as if the animal sensed Keanu's genuine desire to help, his inherent kindness shining through. The dog let out a small whimper, not of fear this time, but of relief, as if it knew it had found a friend in this moment of dire need. Keanu's heart swelled with a mix of sadness and determination. He made a silent promise to the injured creature. He would do everything in his power to right this wrong, to ensure that this dog would never suffer such cruelty again. Little did he know that this promise would lead him on a journey of compassion, justice, and unexpected emotional bonds. As Keanu knelt beside the injured dog, he was struck by the depth of emotion in its eyes. Despite the pain and fear it must have been experiencing, there was an undeniable spark of life, a silent plea for help that touched Keanu to his very core. The dog's gaze seemed to convey a complex mix of emotions: fear, yes, but also a glimmer of hope, as if it recognized in Keanu a potential savior. The actor found himself caught in a moment of profound connection with this small, wounded creature. He had always felt a special affinity for animals, but this was different. This wasn't about admiring a pet from afar or supporting animal welfare causes. This was immediate, raw, and deeply personal. The dog's silent plea resonated within him, awakening a protective instinct he didn't know he possessed. The dog didn't flinch away. Instead, it seemed to lean slightly towards him, as if drawn by the warmth and kindness in Keanu's voice. This small movement, however, caused the dog to whimper in pain, a sound that cut through Keanu like a knife. He realized that time was of the essence. The dog needed medical attention, and fast. Keanu's mind raced, considering his options. He needed to get the dog to a veterinarian, but he was wary of causing more pain by moving it. He also knew that he couldn't leave the animal alone while he went for help. What if the cruel owner came back? Or what if the dog, in its pain and confusion, wandered into the street? As these thoughts tumbled through his mind, Keanu noticed something that made his heart ache even more. Despite its injuries and the trauma it had just endured, the dog was trying to wag its tail. It was a feeble attempt, more of a twitch really, but the meaning was clear. Even in its darkest moment, this brave little creature was trying to be friendly, to connect with the kind human who had come to its aid. This small gesture of trust and resilience strengthened Keanu's resolve. He knew what he had to do. With infinite care, he began to remove his jacket, planning to use it as a makeshift stretcher to carry the dog. As he did so, he continued to talk to the animal, his voice a constant reassuring presence. "You're so brave, little one. I know you're in pain, but I promise I'm going to take care of you. We're going to get through this together." As Keanu prepared to lift the dog, he was struck by how light and fragile it felt. This wasn't a large, robust dog, but a small, vulnerable creature that had been callously discarded like trash. The injustice of it all fueled Keanu's determination. He vowed silently that he would not only help this dog heal, but would also find a way to bring its abuser to justice. Carefully cradling the injured animal in his jacket, Keanu stood up. The dog let out a small whimper but didn't struggle, seeming to understand that Keanu was trying to help. As he held the warm, trembling body close to his chest, Keanu felt a surge of protectiveness wash over him. In that moment, he made a promise, not just to the dog, but to himself. "I've got you now," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You're safe. I won't let anyone hurt you ever again." With these words, Keanu began to walk quickly but carefully towards his home. He knew there was a veterinary clinic nearby, and his mind was already formulating a plan. He would get the dog the medical attention it needed, and then he would figure out the rest. One thing was certain: his ordinary day had turned into an extraordinary mission of compassion and justice. As he walked, Keanu couldn't help but reflect on the strange twists of fate that had brought him to this moment. If he hadn't decided to take that early morning walk, if he hadn't been in exactly the right place at the right time, what would have happened to this innocent creature? The thought sent a shiver down his spine. The weight of the injured dog in his arms felt like a responsibility, but also like a privilege. Keanu had always believed in the importance of kindness and compassion, but now he was living those values in a very real and immediate way. He knew that the road ahead might be challenging, nursing the dog back to health, finding out who was responsible for this cruelty, ensuring justice was served. But he was ready to face those challenges. Its eyes were closed now, but its breathing seemed steady. There was something about its small, battered body that spoke of resilience, of a will to survive despite the cruelty it had faced. Keanu felt a wave of admiration for this brave little soul. "We're almost there," he murmured, as much to reassure himself as the dog. "Just hold on a little longer. Everything's going to be all right." The ordinary day had indeed turned extraordinary, setting in motion a series of events that would challenge him, inspire him, and ultimately remind him of the profound impact that one act of kindness can have in the world. Reaching his vehicle, Keanu faced another dilemma. He needed to open the car door while still holding the dog securely. With some maneuvering, he managed to open the rear door without disturbing his precious cargo. Gently, he lowered the blanket-wrapped dog onto the back seat. He had already decided against putting the animal in the trunk space, wanting to keep a close eye on it during the drive. As he arranged the blanket to create a makeshift nest, Keanu's mind was already racing ahead, planning the next steps. He knew he needed to get the dog to a veterinarian as quickly as possible, but he also wanted to ensure the ride was as smooth and stress-free as possible for the injured animal. With this in mind, he took a moment to clear any loose items from the back seat, creating a safe, stable space for his new charge. Before closing the door, Keanu took one last look at the dog. Its eyes, though clouded with pain, seemed to hold a glimmer of hope. It was as if the animal understood that its fortune had changed, that it was now in caring hands. "We're going to make this right," Keanu promised, his voice thick with emotion. "You're going to be okay." With that, he closed the door gently and moved to the driver's seat. As he started the engine, Keanu's determination solidified. This wasn't just about rescuing a dog. It was about standing up against cruelty and indifference. It was about making a difference, one life at a time. As Keanu eased his car onto the road, he was acutely aware of his precious passenger in the back seat. Every bump, every turn was navigated with extreme care. his usually swift driving style replaced by a cautious approach that prioritized the comfort of the injured dog. His mind raced as he drove, weighing his options. The nearest veterinary clinic was about 15 minutes away, but Keanu knew that in situations like these, every minute counted. He decided to call ahead, wanting to ensure they were prepared for an emergency case. At a red light, Keanu quickly dialed the number of the veterinary clinic. His voice, usually calm and collected, carried an urgency that conveyed the gravity of the situation. "I'm bringing in an injured dog," he explained rapidly to the receptionist. "It's been thrown from a moving vehicle. I'm about 10 minutes out. Please, be ready." The receptionist, recognizing the seriousness of the situation, assured him they would be prepared. Keanu's relief was palpable. He knew that prompt medical attention could make all the difference for the dog's recovery. As he continued to drive, Keanu found himself talking to the dog, his voice a soothing presence in the car. He shared stories of his own experiences with animals, of the dogs he had known and loved. It was as much to comfort the injured animal as it was to calm his own nerves. "You know, I had a dog once named Arch," Keanu said softly, his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror to check on his passenger. "He was the most loyal companion you could ask for. Always there, always understanding. That's the thing about dogs, you see. They have this incredible capacity for love and forgiveness." The dog in the back seat whimpered softly, as if in response. Keanu's heart clenched at the sound. He wanted nothing more than to take away the animal's pain, to undo the cruelty it had endured. "We're almost there, buddy," he reassured, his voice thick with emotion. "Just hang on a little longer." As they neared the veterinary clinic, Keanu's mind turned to the future. What would happen to this dog after its injuries were treated? He couldn't bear the thought of it ending up in a shelter. Or worse, back on the streets. In that moment, without fully realizing it, Keanu made a decision that would change both his life and the life of the injured animal. "You're coming home with me," he said firmly, his eyes meeting the dog's in the rearview mirror. "We're in this together now." Finally, the veterinary clinic came into view. Keanu pulled into the parking lot, relief washing over him as he saw a team already waiting outside. As he carefully lifted the blanket-wrapped dog from the back seat, he felt a surge of protectiveness. This wasn't just a random act of kindness anymore. It was the beginning of a bond, a commitment to see this through to the end. As he carried the dog towards the waiting veterinary team, Keanu's resolve strengthened. He would do whatever it took to nurse this dog back to health, and then he would ensure that justice was served. The person responsible for this act of cruelty would face the consequences of their actions. But for now, his focus was entirely on the trembling bundle in his arms. As he handed the dog over to the capable hands of the veterinarian, Keanu felt a mix of hope and anxiety. The journey to safety was complete, but the road to recovery was just beginning. "You're safe now," Keanu whispered to the dog as it was gently taken from his arms. "I'll be right here waiting for you." As the veterinary team rushed the injured animal inside, Keanu stood in the parking lot, his heart heavy with concern but buoyed by determination. This was more than just a rescue. It was the start of a mission to heal, to protect, and ultimately, to right a terrible wrong. With a deep breath, Keanu followed the team inside. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was ready to face them. For now, all that mattered was the well-being of the brave little dog that had found its way into his care and, unknowingly, into his heart. But he knew that these were the experts who could provide the necessary medical attention. Keanu watched anxiously as they carried the dog into the examination room, his eyes never leaving the swinging doors that separated him from his newfound companion. The next few hours were a blur of activity and tension. Keanu paced the waiting room, his mind racing with questions and concerns. Would the dog survive? How severe were its injuries? What kind of life would it have after this ordeal? The weight of responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders, a burden he willingly accepted. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the lead veterinarian emerged from the examination room. Keanu's heart skipped a beat as he searched the doctor's face for any sign of good news. To his relief, the vet offered a reassuring smile. "The dog is stable," the vet explained, her voice calm and professional. He suffered some bruising and a few minor fractures, but thankfully, there's no internal bleeding or life-threatening injuries. With proper care and rest, he should make a full recovery. Keanu felt a wave of relief wash over him, his tense muscles finally relaxing. But his respite was short-lived as the vet continued. However, the recovery process will be lengthy and demanding. Are you prepared to take on that responsibility? Without hesitation, Keanu nodded firmly. Absolutely, he replied, his voice filled with determination. I'll do whatever it takes to help this dog heal and find happiness again. The vet smiled, impressed by Keanu's commitment. She then proceeded to outline the immediate care plan for the dog. It included pain management, antibiotics to prevent infection, and careful monitoring of his vital signs. Keanu listened intently, absorbing every detail and asking questions to ensure he understood the gravity of the situation and the care required. As the vet finished explaining the medical procedures, Keanu felt a mix of emotions: relief that the dog would survive, anger at the person who had caused this suffering, and a deep sense of responsibility for the creature's well-being. He knew that the journey ahead would be challenging, but he was ready to face it head-on. With the immediate medical crisis addressed, Keanu prepared himself for the next phase of the dog's recovery. He gathered the necessary supplies, including medication, special food, and comfort items to create a safe and nurturing environment for his new companion. As he left the clinic with the dog securely nestled in a comfortable carrier, Keanu felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was no longer just an actor or a celebrity. He was now a caregiver, protector, and friend to this vulnerable creature. The days that followed were a testament to Keanu's unwavering commitment to the injured dog's recovery. He transformed a corner of his home into a cozy, makeshift recovery room, complete with a soft bed, warm blankets, and easy access to water and food. Keanu's focus shifted entirely to providing round-the-clock care for his new companion. Every morning began with a gentle checkup, where Keanu would carefully examine the dog's injuries, looking for any signs of improvement or complications. He diligently followed the vet's instructions, administering medications at precise intervals and changing bandages with the utmost care. The actor's hands, usually seen wielding prop weapons in action movies, now moved with a tender touch, soothing the dog's pain and offering comfort. Keanu's dedication extended far beyond just physical care. He spent hours sitting beside the dog, talking to him in soft, reassuring tones. He read books aloud, shared stories of his own life, and even played gentle music, believing that the positive energy would aid in the healing process. The dog, initially wary and frightened, began to respond to Keanu's voice, his tail wagging slightly at the sound of approaching footsteps. Feeding time became a ritual of patience and encouragement. Keanu prepared special meals as prescribed by the vet, often hand-feeding the dog when it was too weak to eat on its own. He celebrated every small victory, each morsel of food accepted, each small movement made. As a step towards recovery, sleep became a luxury for Keanu as he kept vigilant watch over his charge. Many nights were spent on a makeshift bed next to the dog, ready to offer comfort at the slightest whimper or sign of distress. Dark circles formed under his eyes, but they did nothing to dim the determination that shone within them. As days turned into weeks, Keanu's life revolved entirely around the dog's care. He postponed work commitments, rearranged his schedule, and politely declined social invitations. His friends and colleagues, while surprised at first, soon came to admire his selfless dedication. Some even offered to help, bringing supplies or simply providing moral support during this challenging time. Keanu's journey of caregiving was not without its difficulties. There were moments of frustration when progress seemed slow, and times of fear when the dog's condition momentarily worsened. But through it all, Keanu remained steadfast. He sought advice from veterinarians, researched canine recovery techniques, and even connected with animal rehabilitation experts to ensure he was providing the best possible care. One particularly challenging night, the dog experienced a setback, seeming to be in more pain than usual. Keanu stayed up all night, gently massaging the dog's limbs, speaking words of encouragement, and carefully monitoring his temperature and breathing. As dawn broke, the dog's discomfort eased, and Keanu felt a renewed sense of hope. This experience only strengthened his resolve to see the recovery through to the end. The actor's compassion extended beyond just physical care. Recognizing the emotional trauma the dog had endured, Keanu worked tirelessly to rebuild the animal's trust in humans. He moved slowly around the dog, always speaking in soothing tones, and allowed the dog to initiate contact when it felt comfortable. This patience paid off as the dog gradually began to seek out Keanu's touch, finding comfort in his presence. Keanu's dedication did not go unnoticed by the veterinary staff who regularly checked on the dog's progress. They were impressed by his attention to detail, his willingness to learn, and his unwavering commitment. One vet remarked, "In all my years of practice, I've rarely seen someone so dedicated to an animal's recovery. Keanu's care is making a real difference." As weeks turned into a month, the demanding care routine became second nature to Keanu. He found a new rhythm to his life, one that revolved around the needs of his canine companion. The exhaustion and sacrifices seemed small in comparison to the joy he felt watching the dog grow stronger each day. In caring for this injured creature, Keanu discovered a depth of compassion within himself that he hadn't fully realized before. As the days passed, small but significant signs of improvement began to emerge in the dog's condition. These changes, while subtle at first, were like beacons of hope for Keanu, reinforcing his belief in the power of care and perseverance. The first notable improvement came in the dog's appetite. What started as a struggle to consume even the smallest amounts of food gradually evolved into eager anticipation of meal times. Keanu's heart swelled with joy the first time he saw the dog's tail wag at the sight of his food bowl. This renewed interest in eating was not just a sign of physical recovery, but also indicated a growing will to live and thrive. Mobility was the next hurdle to overcome. In the beginning, the dog could barely move without whimpering in pain. Keanu, under the guidance of the vet, began a gentle physical therapy routine. He started with simple exercises, carefully moving the dog's legs to prevent muscle atrophy. As days turned into weeks, these sessions became more involved. Keanu would encourage the dog to take a few steps, supporting its weight and praising every effort. The breakthrough came on a sunny afternoon, about 3 weeks into the recovery process. Keanu was sitting on the floor, gently coaxing the dog to walk towards him, when suddenly, the animal took several unassisted steps. The moment was electric. Keanu's eyes welled up with tears of joy, and the dog, seeming to sense the significance of the moment, gave a small, triumphant bark. This milestone marked a turning point in the recovery journey. From that day forward, progress seemed to accelerate. The dog began to move around more, exploring its surroundings with growing confidence. Keanu created safe spaces throughout the house, allowing the dog to roam and rebuild its strength naturally. He watched with pride as his furry friend navigated small obstacles, each day venturing a little further than the last. The physical wounds began to heal visibly. Bruises faded, cuts closed, and fur started to grow back over scarred areas. Keanu diligently applied the prescribed ointments and changed bandages, noting with satisfaction how the dog's body was mending itself. The vet's checkups became occasions for celebration as each visit confirmed the steady progress. Perhaps the most heartening aspect of the recovery was the change in the dog's demeanor. The fear and wariness that had initially clouded its eyes began to dissipate, replaced by a growing spark of curiosity and joy. The dog started to respond more enthusiastically to Keanu's voice, even attempting to play at times. These moments of playfulness, though brief at first, were precious indicators of the animal's improving mental state. Sleep patterns improved dramatically as well. Gone were the restless nights filled with whimpers of pain. Instead, the dog began to sleep peacefully, often curled up close to Keanu. This deep, healing sleep was crucial for the recovery process, allowing the dog's body to focus its energy on repair and regeneration. As the recovery progressed, Keanu introduced more elements of a normal dog's life. He brought in soft toys, carefully chosen to be safe for the still healing animal. The first time the dog picked up a toy in its mouth and brought it to Keanu was a moment of pure joy. It was a clear sign that the dog was not just recovering physically but was beginning to embrace life again. Outdoor experiences were gradually reintroduced. Initially, this meant simply sitting in the backyard, allowing the dog to feel the grass under its paws and breathe in the fresh air. As strength returned, these outings extended to short, gentle walks. Keanu was ever vigilant, watching for signs of fatigue or discomfort, always ready to carry the dog home if needed. The dog's senses seemed to reawaken during this period of recovery. Keanu noticed how his companion would perk up at the sound of birds or the scent of flowers. These small reactions to the world around them were powerful reminders of the resilience of life and the dog's growing engagement with its environment. Throughout this journey of recovery, there were setbacks, days when progress seemed to halt or even reverse. During these times, Keanu's patience and positivity were crucial. He learned to celebrate even the smallest victories and to maintain hope during challenging periods. His unwavering belief in the dog's ability to heal seemed to transmit itself to the animal, providing a constant source of encouragement. As weeks turned into months, the transformation became undeniable. The once broken creature that Keanu had rescued from the roadside was evolving into a vibrant, energetic dog. Scars remained, both physical and emotional, but they were overshadowed by the new lease on life that shone through in every wagging tail and playful bark. The vet, on a recent checkup, marveled at the progress. "This recovery is nothing short of miraculous," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "It's a testament to both the dog's resilience and your extraordinary care, Keanu." For Keanu, watching this gradual recovery was a profoundly moving experience. It reinforced his belief in the power of compassion and the incredible strength of the bond between humans and animals. As he looked at the now thriving dog, he felt a sense of accomplishment, unlike any he had experienced in his career. This journey of healing had not only transformed the dog, but had also left an indelible mark on Keanu's own heart. As the dog's physical recovery progressed, something equally profound was taking place: the formation of an unbreakable bond between Keanu and his canine companion. This connection, forged through countless hours of care, shared struggles, and small triumphs, grew into a relationship that would change both of their lives forever. The foundation of this bond was laid in those early days of intense care. Keanu's gentle touch, soothing voice, and constant presence became a source of comfort and security for the traumatized dog. As the animal began to associate Keanu with safety and relief from pain, a tentative trust started to form. This trust was the seedling from which their deep connection would grow. As the dog's strength returned, so did its personality. Keanu watched with delight as quirks and traits began to emerge. He discovered that his new friend had a particular fondness for classical music, often tilting its head in curiosity when Keanu played Bach or Mozart. This shared appreciation for music became a special part of their routine, with Keanu often humming tunes as they relaxed together. Communication between them evolved in subtle, yet meaningful ways. Keanu learned to read the dog's body language, understanding when it needed comfort, play, or simply some quiet companionship. In turn, the dog became attuned to Keanu's moods, offering a comforting paw or a playful nudge when it sensed he was stressed or tired. This nonverbal dialogue deepened their connection, creating a mutual understanding that transcended words. Their bond was strengthened through shared experiences and routines. Morning walks, once a careful exercise in rebuilding strength, became joyous explorations. Keanu delighted in watching his companion's growing curiosity about the world. The way it would pause to sniff a flower or playfully chase a butterfly. These simple moments of shared joy cemented their relationship. As the dog's playfulness returned, so did a new dimension to their bond. Keanu found himself laughing more than he had in years, engaged in silly games of tug-of-war or fetch. The pure, uncomplicated happiness that radiated from the dog during these play sessions was infectious, reminding Keanu of the simple pleasures in life. The emotional healing of the dog became intertwined with Keanu's own emotional journey, as he helped his companion overcome fear and trauma. Keanu found himself confronting and healing some of his own emotional scars. The unconditional love and trust the dog offered became a powerful force in Keanu's life, helping him navigate his own challenges with renewed strength and perspective. Their connection deepened through moments of vulnerability. On nights when the dog had nightmares, likely reliving its traumatic experience, Keanu was there to provide comfort and reassurance. Similarly, On days when Keanu felt overwhelmed by the pressures of his career or personal life, the simple act of sitting quietly with his loyal companion brought a sense of peace and grounding. As time passed, it became clear that their bond was not just one of caregiver and patient, but of true companionship. The dog's presence in Keanu's life filled a void he hadn't even realized existed. The unconditional love and loyalty he received were matched only by his own devotion to his furry friend. This deep connection began to influence other aspects of Keanu's life. He found himself making decisions with the dog's well-being in mind, from choosing film projects that wouldn't require long periods away from home to redesigning parts of his house to be more dog-friendly. The needs and happiness of his companion became seamlessly integrated into his life plans. The transformation in both Keanu and the dog was noticed by everyone around them. Friends and colleagues remarked on the newfound lightness in Keanu's demeanor, the way his eyes lit up when he spoke about his dog. Veterinarians and animal behaviorists were amazed at the dog's recovery, not just physically but emotionally, attributing much of it to the strong bond it had formed with Keanu. As the months passed, their relationship continued to evolve and deepen. They developed their own language of sorts, a look, a gesture, a particular bark that conveyed volumes between them. Keanu found himself talking to the dog about his day, sharing thoughts and feelings he rarely expressed to anyone else. In those moments, he felt truly heard and understood. The impact of this bond extended beyond their personal relationship. Keanu became more involved in animal welfare causes, using his platform to advocate for rescue animals and responsible pet ownership. His experience had opened his eyes to the profound impact that the human-animal bond can have, and he felt compelled to share this message with the world. In quiet moments, Keanu often reflected on the serendipity of their meeting. What had started as a chance encounter on a roadside had blossomed into one of the most significant relationships of his life. He marveled at how this creature, once broken and discarded, had brought such richness and meaning to his existence. As they sat together on the porch one evening, watching the sunset, with the dog on the mend, Keanu Reeves found himself unable to shake off the lingering sense of injustice. The image of the innocent creature being callously tossed from a moving vehicle haunted him, fueling a determination to right this wrong. Keanu knew that true healing for both the dog and his own conscience would only come through seeking justice for the heinous act. Keanu's first step was to retrace his steps to the scene of the incident. He revisited the stretch of road where he had first encountered the injured dog, hoping to find any clues that might lead him to the perpetrator. As he scanned the area, his keen eye caught sight of something glinting in the afternoon sun. A small piece of metal that appeared to have fallen from a vehicle. Upon closer inspection, Keanu realized it was a custom license plate frame, likely dislodged during the abrupt stop when the dog was thrown out. The frame bore the name of a local auto shop, providing Keanu with his first solid lead. With renewed vigor, he set out to follow this thread, determined to unravel the mystery and bring the culprit to justice. Keanu's next move was to visit the auto shop mentioned on the license plate frame. Approaching the counter, he craftily engaged the mechanic in conversation, weaving a story about how he was looking for a friend who had recently had work done at their shop. He described the vehicle he had glimpsed on that fateful day, careful not to arouse suspicion. The mechanic, unsuspecting and eager to help, checked their records and provided Keanu with a list of recent customers who matched the description. Armed with this information, Keanu felt a surge of hope. He was one step closer to identifying the person responsible for the dog's suffering. As night fell, Keanu found himself poring over the list of names and addresses, cross-referencing them with public records and social media profiles. His celebrity status granted him access to resources that might have been out of reach for the average person, and he leveraged every connection he had to gather more information. Hours turned into days as Keanu pursued every lead, no matter how small. He interviewed neighbors, checked security camera footage from nearby businesses, and even enlisted the help of a private investigator friend to dig deeper into the backgrounds of potential suspects. Throughout this process, Keanu's resolve never wavered. The memory of the dog's pain-filled eyes and whimpers of agony fueled his determination. He knew that somewhere out there, the person responsible for this cruelty was going about their life, unaware that justice was closing in on them. After days of relentless investigation, Keanu's efforts finally bore fruit. He had narrowed down his list of suspects to a single individual, a man named Frank Davenport, whose address matched one on the list provided by the auto shop. Keanu's heart raced as he drove to the address, a modest house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. As he approached, he noticed a vehicle in the driveway that matched the description of the one he had seen on that fateful day. The custom license plate frame from the auto shop was clearly visible, confirming Keanu's suspicions. Parking his car a short distance away, Keanu observed the house, watching for any signs of activity. He needed to be certain that this was indeed the right place before making his move. As he waited, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From the moment he found the injured dog to the painstaking investigation that followed. As dusk settled over the neighborhood, Keanu saw a man matching Frank Davenport's description return home. The man's demeanor was casual, showing no signs of the guilt or remorse that should have plagued someone who had committed such a cruel act. This only served to strengthen Keanu's resolve. With the abuser's residence now confirmed, Keanu knew he had to proceed cautiously. He couldn't risk alerting Davenport to his presence or intentions. Keanu decided to conduct further surveillance, observing Davenport's routines and habits to determine the best time to confront him. Over the next few days, Keanu meticulously documented Davenport's comings and goings. He noticed that Davenport lived alone and typically left for work early in the morning, returning in the evening. On weekends, he often spent time in his garage, working on his car, the very vehicle used in the act of cruelty against the dog. As Keanu watched Davenport go about his daily life, seemingly without a care in the world, he felt a mixture of anger and disbelief. How could someone capable of such callousness towards an innocent animal live so normally? The contrast between Davenport's mundane routines and the pain he had inflicted on the dog only fueled Keanu's determination to bring him to justice. During his surveillance, Keanu also took note of the neighborhood dynamics. He observed the comings and goings of other residents, identified any potential witnesses, and mapped out possible escape routes. This meticulous planning was crucial. Keanu knew that when the time came to confront Davenport, he needed to be prepared for any eventuality. As the days passed, Keanu's resolve only grew stronger. He thought about the dog, now recovering in the safety of his home, and knew that he owed it to the innocent creature to see this through. The weight of responsibility sat heavily on his shoulders, but Keanu embraced it, drawing strength from the knowledge that he was fighting for a voiceless victim. Finally, after a week of careful observation and planning, Keanu felt ready to make his move. He had identified a window of opportunity, a time when Davenport would be home alone, with minimal risk of interruption or witnesses. With a mix of anticipation and trepidation, Keanu prepared himself for the confrontation that lay ahead. As twilight descended on the quiet suburban street, Keanu Reeves steeled himself for the confrontation he had been preparing for. He parked his car a block away and approached Frank Davenport's house on foot, his heart pounding with a mixture of righteous anger and nervous energy. Keanu knocked on the door, his knuckles rapping against the wood with a determination that belied the turmoil within him. Moments later, the door swung open, revealing Frank Davenport, the man Keanu had spent weeks tracking down. "Can I help you?" Davenport asked, his expression a mixture of confusion and annoyance at the unexpected visitor. Keanu's voice was low and controlled as he responded, "Mr. Davenport, we need to talk about what happened on Highway 101 2 weeks ago." The color drained from Davenport's face, his eyes widening in recognition and fear. He attempted to slam the door shut, but Keanu was prepared, wedging his foot in the doorway and pushing his way into the house. "Who are you?" Davenport stammered, backing away as Keanu advanced into the living room. "I'm the person who found the dog you threw out of your car," Keanu replied, his voice thick with emotion. "The dog that you left to die on the side of the road." Davenport's face contorted into a mix of defiance and panic. "I don't know what you're talking about," he sputtered, but the tremor in his voice betrayed his guilt. Keanu's eyes blazed with intensity as he recounted the events of that day, describing in vivid detail the condition of the dog and the suffering it had endured. With each word, Davenport seemed to shrink, the weight of his actions finally catching up to him. "Why?" Keanu demanded, his voice rising. Why would you do something so cruel to an innocent animal? Davenport's facade crumbled, and he collapsed onto his couch, burying his face in his hands. I didn't mean to, he choked out. The dog was sick, and I couldn't afford the vet bills. I panicked. I didn't know what else to do. Keanu felt a surge of disgust and pity wash over him. There are always other options, he said, his voice softening slightly. Shelters, rescue organizations, even asking for help online. What you did was not just cruel, it was cowardly. As Davenport sat there, shoulders shaking with silent sobs, Keanu took a moment to look around the room. His eyes fell on a framed photo of a young girl hugging a dog, presumably Davenport's daughter, with the very animal he had discarded so callously. Is this your daughter? Keanu asked, picking up the frame. Davenport nodded weakly. And this was her dog, wasn't it? Keanu pressed, his voice laden with disappointment and anger. Another nod from Davenport, who couldn't bring himself to meet Keanu's gaze. What did you tell her? Keanu asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I told her the dog ran away, Davenport admitted, his voice breaking. I couldn't bear to tell her the truth. The room fell silent, the weight of Davenport's confession hanging heavily in the air. Keanu took a deep breath, struggling to contain the maelstrom of emotions swirling within him. Mr. Davenport, Keanu began, his voice steady and resolute. What you did was inexcusable. That dog trusted you, depended on you. And you betrayed that trust in the worst possible way. Davenport remained silent, his head bowed in shame. But, Keanu continued, I didn't come here just to condemn you. I came here to give you a chance to make things right. Davenport looked up, confusion and a glimmer of hope in his tear-stained eyes. The dog survived, Keanu revealed. I found him, got him medical treatment, and he's recovering. But he deserves justice, and so does your daughter. Keanu's words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their implications. Frank Davenport sat frozen, his face a canvas of conflicting emotions, relief that the dog had survived, fear of the consequences he might face, and shame for his actions. What do you want me to do? Davenport asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Keanu's eyes narrowed, his jaw set with determination. First, you're going to come with me to see the dog. You need to face the consequences of your actions head-on. Davenport nodded weakly, knowing he had no choice but to comply. As they left the house and got into Keanu's car, an uncomfortable silence settled between them. The short drive to Keanu's temporary residence felt like an eternity for Davenport, each passing moment bringing him closer to confronting the living evidence of his cruelty. Upon arriving, Keanu led Davenport into the house. The moment they stepped inside, they were greeted by the soft whimpers of the recovering dog. Davenport's breath caught in his throat as he laid eyes on the animal he had so callously discarded. The dog, still bearing the visible signs of its ordeal, cowered at the sight of Davenport. Its reaction was a stark reminder of the trauma it had endured. Keanu knelt beside the dog, gently stroking its fur to calm it. This is what you did, Keanu said, his voice low and intense. This is the pain and fear you caused. Davenport's legs gave way, and he sank to his knees, overwhelmed by the reality of his actions. Tears streamed down his face as he reached out a trembling hand towards the dog, only to have it shrink away in fear. I'm so sorry, Davenport sobbed, the weight of his guilt crushing down on him. I didn't think. No, you didn't think, Keanu interjected sharply. You didn't think about the pain you were causing, about the life you were throwing away. As Davenport continued to weep, Keanu's expression softened slightly. He knew that true justice wasn't about revenge, but about restoration and preventing future harm. Mr. Davenport, Keanu began, his tone firm but not unkind. What you did was horrible, but you have a chance to make amends. Here's what's going to happen. Keanu outlined his plan. Davenport would confess his actions to his daughter, explaining the truth about what happened to her dog. He would then work with local animal shelters, volunteering his time to care for abandoned and abused animals. Additionally, he would make regular donations to animal welfare organizations, ensuring that other animals in need would receive the care his dog should have gotten. But that's not all. Keanu continued, his eyes locked on Davenport's. You're going to experience a fraction of what this dog went through. Davenport looked up, fear evident in his eyes. For the next week, you'll sleep outside in your backyard. No comfortable bed, no shelter beyond what you can make for yourself. You'll eat from a bowl on the ground, and you'll experience the vulnerability and discomfort this dog felt when you abandoned it. Davenport nodded, accepting his punishment without protest. He knew that compared to what he had done, this was a small price to pay. And one more thing, Keanu added, his voice softening. After you've completed this, and if the dog is willing, you'll have the chance to make things right with him, to earn his trust back, and maybe, in time, to reunite him with your daughter. Davenport's eyes widened at this unexpected opportunity for redemption. You'd allow that? He asked, his voice trembling with emotion. Keanu nodded solemnly. This isn't about punishment for punishment's sake. It's about learning, growing, and making amends. If you can prove that you've changed, that you understand the gravity of what you did, then yes, there's a chance for reconciliation. As the reality of Keanu's words sank in, Davenport's demeanor changed. The fear and shame in his eyes were replaced by a glimmer of determination and hope. He looked at the dog, then back at Keanu, and nodded resolutely. I'll do it, he said, his voice steadier than it had been all evening. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Keanu stood up, extending a hand to help Davenport to his feet. Then let's begin, he said. Over the next week, Keanu supervised Davenport's punishment, ensuring he adhered to the agreed-upon conditions. He watched as Davenport struggled with the discomfort and exposure, gaining a new appreciation for the hardships animals face when abandoned. During this time, Keanu also worked with the dog, slowly acclimating it to Davenport's presence. The process was slow and often challenging, but gradually, the dog's fear began to subside. As the week drew to a close, Keanu observed a profound change in Davenport. The man who had so callously thrown away a life was now humbled, his eyes opened to the consequences of his actions. He had confessed to his daughter, faced her tears and anger, and committed himself to making amends. On the final day, Keanu brought the dog to Davenport's yard. With gentle encouragement, the dog cautiously approached Davenport, who remained still, allowing the animal to make the choice. As the dog sniffed his hand and then tentatively licked it, Davenport broke down in tears of remorse and gratitude. Keanu watched the scene unfold, a mix of emotions washing over him. He had set out to seek justice, to right a wrong, and in the process, he had facilitated a transformation. The road ahead would be long, with much work still to be done. But in this moment, he saw the first steps towards healing and redemption. As he prepared to leave, Keanu reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From the moment he found the injured dog on the roadside to this day of tentative reconciliation, he had been driven by a deep sense of compassion and justice. He realized that true heroism wasn't just about grand gestures, but about the everyday choice to stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves. With a final look at Davenport and the dog, now cautiously bonding in the yard, Keanu turned to leave. He knew that his work here was done, but the impact of his actions would ripple outward, touching not just the lives of this man and this dog, but potentially inspiring others to act with kindness and courage in the face of cruelty. As he walked away, Keanu felt a sense of peace settle over him. He had sought justice, but in the end, he had found something more powerful, the potential for change, for growth, and for compassion to triumph over cruelty. And in that realization, Keanu found the true meaning of his journey. His unwavering commitment to nursing the dog back to health and confronting the perpetrator demonstrates that one person's actions can make a profound difference in the life of another, even if that life belongs to a four-legged friend. As we reflect on this touching story, let it serve as a reminder that we all have the capacity to be heroes in our everyday lives. Whether it's helping an animal in need, standing up against cruelty, or simply showing compassion to those around us, our actions can create ripples of positive change. May Keanu's example inspire us to be more aware of the suffering around us and to take action, no matter how small. to make the world a better place for all living beings.